Welcome to Fridays with a Forester. My name is Gary Wyatt. This is March 24th, and we're going to talk about windbreaks and living snow fences. Today we have Lauren Beckus from the regional office at Andover. She's support staff there, and she's been really helpful at our Fridays with a Forester sessions and series. And my name is Gary Wyatt, also a host of the webinar today. Actually, I'll be presenting the webinar today too on windbreaks and living snow fences. I'm based out of the Mankato Regional Office. Gary Wyatt, Extension Educator in Agroforestry and Invasive Species. And there's my email address. And I'll show that again at the end of the presentation. So Zoom details today, we'd like you to enter your questions in the Q&A, please. There is a chat that's open if you want to share amongst yourselves or any other websites or types of information. We are recording these webinars, so they'll be available at the Z link, z.umn.edu/Fridays. So I'll get started. Windbreaks and living snow fences. We've really noticed with our heavy snowfall in Minnesota, the advantage of windbreaks and living snow fences in Minnesota. At every presentation I do almost anymore, I also mention the ecological classification of native plant communities that the Minnesota DNR has put together on their website. This is really a neat opportunity for you to understand the plant structure, the trees and shrubs, the understory plants that were in your location, your property, pre-settlement days. So if you haven't looked at that, certainly take an opportunity and find that website and look at the particular property area that you have on the map, and then find out the trees, shrubs, and understory that were native to your property years ago. First of all, also a county resource for windbreaks and living snow fences, certainly your Soil Water Conservation District Office, your Natural Resource Conservation Service, and then also we have some county extension offices that have support staff and also county extension educators that are versed in trees and shrubs that can help you determine what windbreak plants to plant and design. The SWCD and NRCS offices also may have some cost share or some funding available to you, both state and federal funding, to plant windbreaks and living snow fences. So be aware of that. Agroforestry is the intentional combining of agriculture and working trees to create sustainable farming systems. Windbreaks is one of the 5 practices of agroforestry. So the others are silvopasture, alley cropping, forest farming, and repairing forest buffers. Another note there, we're seeing a really increase in silvopasture in the state and use of sustainable farming practices in all these practices. And I wanted to make a clarity of Tyler Carlson is the Sustainable Farming Association contact for silvopasture and agroforestry. So you may want to contact him as well. So the benefits of windbreaks are many: structural protection, screening, noise abatement, dust reduction, beauty, wildlife habitat, and obviously directing the wind. There you see a picture of a building site protected on the north and west side of that particular site. There's been a survey done years ago on different reasons for planting windbreaks and living snow fences. Obviously, wind protection is probably the biggest factor. Wildlife habitat, energy costs, and visual screening at the bottom as 58%, certainly all contribute to the benefits of windbreaks and living snow fences. So not all windbreaks are created equal. What you want your windbreak to do, protect what, determines the type of windbreak that you want and that you want to design. There are certainly a lot of multiple different windbreaks that you can actually protect different sites. So windbreaks is the plantings of single or multiple rows of trees and shrubs that direct and redirect or modify the wind and establish one or more environmental purposes. So here you see in the upper left-hand corner, field windbreaks. In the center, upper center is field wind or farmstead shelter belt or windbreak. And then we also have living snow fences that protect highways. In the bottom left is a feedlot that's being protected by windbreaks. In the center bottom is a community windbreak or living snow fence protecting a small community. And there's also microclimates or irrigation systems that are protecting specialty crops or crops being irrigated. Certainly wind protection and drying out type of problems are abated with windbreaks and living snow fences in those areas. So windbreaks also act as living snow fences. Here you have a scene, a winter scene that's protecting a swine barn. And we're looking actually to the north, and to the left is west. These plantings are very well done. They're spaced 25 feet apart in different rows. The honeysuckle row is the first catch of snow. The far left planting, that's the first planting. Anything you plant in the edge or the wind protection area first is going to catch the snowdrifts. So that's a key, that you want to plant a shrub that can break and then regrow and so forth, because the shrubs are going to catch a lot of the snow and a lot of the drifts. And a key point too is 150 feet away of your protected site. I'm not going to review this very in detail, but spacing between the rows, certainly you want to maybe look at the equipment that you're using. If you're using mowers between the rows, spacing accordingly. You want to think about the mature height and width of these particular plantings of shrubs and trees. Space 4 feet wider than the width of the mower if possible, and do believe and think about the mature growth of these particular shrubs and trees that you're planting. And space within the row certainly could be tighter. The problem we're seeing in spruce is that they don't like to touch each other. So we're recommending 25 feet apart for conifers, for spruce trees. And yeah, that's a lot. If you're planting a 12-inch, a foot or 2 foot type of plant, 25 feet away, looks like the gap is going to be so big that you're not going to protect any building site at all. But you need to consider multiple rows and obviously space plants within those gaps on other rows. But the closer the spacing, the quicker protection. But a lot of people are saying, oh, I'll remove those plants when they get older. But usually that's never the case. Either they change building sites, they sell it and so forth, and the other owner doesn't do it, and it becomes a problem. So be thinking about that. Obviously, mature heights, mature widths at planting time, and then space accordingly. Space is always good. And then spacing too close can lead to more diseases and thinning in the future. So we'll get into windbreak design real quick. One of the key points of windbreak design is the height of the planting. And you want to consider the height of the planting at maturity, but certainly as you're planting, that's not going to be mature in so many years and so forth. So it'll take a while. And you could plant other willows or hybrid poplars that would grow fast in your windbreak, and then obviously remove them or have them in the outer edge of the windbreak as well. So a couple of key points on windbreak design. Wind is reduced on the leeward side by 10 times the height. So that's the downwind side. And it could be more, actually. Some reduction of wind occurs at 25 times the height of the planting. Density of the planting, shape, height is important. Whether you plant a spruce, cedar, maple, lilac, or a shrub certainly makes a difference. And then plant perpendicular to the wind direction. Usually north and west is the protected zones for Minnesota. And a windbreak in South Dakota was actually documented to cut fuel consumption by 40%. So that's a little factoid that I wanted to insert there. So these are different diagrams of what the wind does around a windbreak. And so drifts will form probably 2 to 5 times the height on the windward side of the windbreak, and then obviously 10 to 20 times the height of the windbreak on the leeward side or downwind after the windbreak. And then also look at that flow of the wind, that edge effect that does curve around. If you think about snow drifts, on the edge effect of these windbreaks, we do have an edge effect that comes around and whips around the snow and so forth. So a portion of the airflows of the windbreak is kind of in these diagrams. It's really interesting to consider when you're developing a windbreak. This is a traditional windbreak. Actually, is a little bit different than some of the ones that we designed in Minnesota. This might be an environment that doesn't have snow. As you notice, the shrub row on the left, and then the conifer trees are then planted, and then deciduous trees on the inside. We would probably flip that around to have shrubs and then deciduous trees, and then also the conifers would be on the inside of the planting to protect the building site. We'll show you a few other pictures of common windbreaks in a little bit later. So density is a big factor. This is a solid portion of the pictures that you see here. Of the barrier is the solid barrier, is the density of the planting. So here you see diagrams. I'm not going to go through this very extensively, but you see the different density portions of these plantings. In the center part is 50 to 60% density, and then 65 plus at the bottom because of the conifer plantings. They keep their needles obviously throughout the year. And obviously if it's more than a single row, then you get more density in your planting. Porosity is the open areas of the windbreak. So that's another term that people use, but density and height, they're probably the two most important factors in developing a windbreak. Here you see different examples of both fall and summertime type growth. So if you're developing a windbreak for living snow fence in the wintertime, you probably want to look at some conifers that are going to keep their needles in the wintertime, and maybe some shrubs that will protect the planting as well. I won't go extensively in this diagram, but I wanted to show you the different Wyoming snow fences on the top, and then a vertical slatted snow fence is the second diagram. One single row of deciduous shrub. You see the windward side is actually catching snow up to 10 times the height, and then obviously 25 times the height in back of those snow drifts area. And if we just have a single row of deciduous tree, we don't have any shrub row, the snow is going to almost blow right through there and level out the drifts. So you can see that diagram there as well. And then near the bottom is a 3-row conifer. We have snow drift on the windward side, and then obviously a bigger drift on the leeward side, and going out maybe 35 feet times the height as a protected area. And then at the bottom, I wanted to show that picture too. It's pretty interesting that you can have a snow catch area and then a space. It could be farmed, it could be row cropped between that planting, certainly, but that would be the first snow catch would be a shrub row, and then a more protected zone would be a 3-row conifer planting, and then obviously drifting after that. You can see that diagram there. These diagrams are on the Agroforestry website, and we'll show that at the end as well. This is a really interesting diagram. Our prevailing winds in wintertime from November to March is northwest in Minnesota predominantly. And then in summertime, we get southeast winds from April to October. So this is an interesting little planting. I think I'll come to it. And let's see, I wonder why that didn't go. I think I have another diagram here, but nope. Okay. Trees directed by the wind. You see that just a diagram here that the wind goes over the trees and then is in a protected area, and it could be 10 times to 35 times the height of the planting. Here's the diagram I was looking at. So this was that little house that was depicted before in prevailing winds. So you see that they've planted actually those trees probably before the house was built, that established row of trees right there. And then in the north, and then you see that little red line. That little red line is what you think it is. It's a snow fence, okay? So what happened is that with that established windbreak, the snow catch came around the edge effect and actually dumped snow right in the driveway, right in front of the house. So that was really not a good plan. So they extended a living snow fence actually out. You see those little green dots there, and they extended it both directions actually to try and protect the driveway there. And then that red snow fence is going out even further. I thought that was an interesting little picture and diagram. So remember the edge effect on these windbreaks, farm shelter belts, and living snow fences. There's corners. The edges are going to catch snow, and wrap around those windbreaks. Couple more diagrams. You want to keep your south-facing windows open for winter sun in the upper climates of Midwest and so forth. And obviously you would need to protect your north and west sides of your house from wind and snow. And if you have more room for a deeper windbreak and more rows for a windbreak, then certainly you can have a larger windbreak, and maybe conifers would be the inner protection layer, deciduous trees, and then the outer layer would be more smaller shrubs, and then that would be catching the first snow drifts, and then the drifts would drift into the deciduous trees. A couple diagrams of some Whatwan County farms that I visited in southwestern Minnesota. Here's a picture of a shrub row that's to the north, and this highway is north and south, and we're just taking a photograph from the highway, but you can see the drifts forming after the shrub row into the deciduous trees. And then we have the conifer planting that's closest to the building site. I think we got another photograph of that. You can almost walk through the deciduous trees there, and it has 3 rows of deciduous trees. And then I think it was 2 rows of coniferous trees. Another building site further west is close to Marshall, actually. And this was west. There's a highway to the west going north and south. You can see the small shrub rows and then deciduous trees where the drift is formed, and then larger deciduous trees, and then the conifer plantings on the inside of the building site. A little closer look at that. Very nice windbreak. And we've noticed this winter with the heavy snows, a lot of our deer and pheasants and overwintering type of animals have been harboring themselves in these woody structures for thermal cover. Here's another, this was taken in Iowa, I think. This was Rhodosier dogwoods, shrubs on the north side, and then hybrid poplars. And then I think there was spruce planted there on the inside, the 2 rows there. I've got another picture there in the summertime. Here's another photograph of Rhodosier dogwood shrubs. And then the conifers, a little bit of switch here on a row of the conifers there of spruce, and then deciduous trees on the inside. I think I would have reversed that, but obviously the snow catch caught most of the snow in the deciduous trees. The problem here might be if you have a large winter, if you have snow drifting on the conifer trees, it might break their limbs and reduce their effectiveness. So that's the key point of spacing the deciduous trees right after the shrub row to catch the snow, and not to allow the snow to drift onto the conifer trees. A couple different examples of gaps. If you want the gaps, that's fine. If they're protecting field windbreaks and so forth, that's certainly fine. But just know that that's not going to be a fully protected area. A couple of living snow fences that I shot around St. James. This is Highway 4 and 60. This is one of our FEMA plantings. After the big snows in the 90s, we've got federal dollars to plant living snow fences around problem areas of state highways. And this is a lilac planting and a single row, I believe, of eastern red cedars, and doing very well. So the red cedars on the north side of the road, and then the drifts are forming on the lilacs, and the lilacs then obviously can regrow after they get broken down by the snow drifts. Another planting just protecting an intersection on Highway 60, and that's Rhodosier dogwood shrubs on the leeward side of the planting. The first catch is going to be the windbreak of the spruce trees. This is an interesting farm shelter belt planting in 2000 and 2023. You can see that they've grown a little bit, but then with this winter, they've really caught that second row. They've really caught a lot of snow. It'll be interesting to see how much damage we see on that second row of conifers there. And then you could certainly restructure and renovate existing windbreaks. Here's a renovation that's using a weed mat, and then taking out some trees in the middle and replanting trees. I would recommend a grass buffer on the edge of the crop fields. If you have a windbreak that edges on the edge of a crop, corn, soybean field, or other field row crop, it just is a nice area to protect from the crop. It spaces the planting, and then obviously is a good buffer if you can get that into a pollinator planting or a CRP planting. That would bring in more dollars per acre for a 15-year program. Just want to talk about MnDOT's snow fence program. They are paying farmers to reduce snow on state highways. There's over 3,700 problem snow sites in the state of Minnesota. And if you live or have ownership of a field next to a state highway that's a problems for MnDOT, then you may want to contact them. I have Dan Gullickson's email at the end of the presentation. Living snow fences in Minnesota, on average, is 17 times more cost effective than removing the snow from the roadways. Pretty neat. So here's the 4 different ways of what MnDOT does to protect highways. Obviously, grading on new or existing highways that are being remodeled and renovated. Grading is a big factor nowadays. And then obviously paying farmers and landowners living snow fences, standing corn rows, or structural snow fences is another payment opportunity for farmers and landowners. Here's the MnDOT site. The Z-Link is probably the best link. Dan Gullickson is in charge of the MnDOT's Living Snow Fence program, z.umn.edu/MnDOT-LSF. I do have a fact sheet on our website that you can look at. And this is just some trees and shrubs that are recommended now for windbreaks. There you can see a lot of different shrubs that are providing fruit and nuts that could be planted. Hazelnuts, service berries. If you've got kids or grandkids, those are great plants to plant, and you can harvest those berries in the spring for June berries and service berries. And then obviously in the fall, hazelnuts can be harvested for nuts. And then the smaller trees there, from plums to cherries. And we have some deciduous trees. And on the conifers, we have problems with needle cast disease in our spruce. So we're recommending Meyer spruce and Norway spruce probably to be looked at. And yeah, instead of Black Hills and Colorado blue spruce. Okay, real quickly, I wanted to mention some resources. This is our Agroforestry University of Minnesota Extension Agroforestry website. And you can go there and find out more information about the 5 practices, including windbreaks and the trees for windbreaks as well. There's a USDA Agroforestry, National Agroforestry Center website for agroforestry. They have a windbreak page. They have excellent resources. Some of the diagrams that I've shown you are located on that website. Then there's a University of Missouri has a Center for Agroforestry. They also have a lot of information available to homeowners and landowners for windbreaks and living snow fences. The Savannah Institute is also another agroforestry kind of organization, nonprofit that has some excellent resources and handouts available for agroforestry and also windbreaks and living snow fences. We are revising our recommended trees for Minnesota. So our forestry team and horticulture team is working on that diligently. We're hoping to have that done this summer and maybe for the metro area this spring. Another website you may want to consider is the MnDOT Plant Selector. It's a really neat site to dabble in. You can look at planting sites. If you've got a clay soil or something, you can actually enter your soils and see what plants would be adapted for that type of condition. And then also trees and shrubs are also on that website. Very good. How about a windbreak cookbook? Fruits and nuts from your windbreak. The North Dakota State University has put together this, as well as the U.S. Forest Service and North Dakota Forest Service. Pretty cool. And I've got copies if you'd like a copy. This is a really good tool, the snow control tools.umn.edu. Down here, it has the design web tool. I'd urge you to try that if you're interested in designing your own living snow fence. It goes to your site and is really cool to work with and play with. I may close with that right now. Actually, I do have a video. Let's see. Lauren, what time do you have here?
9:25.
Yeah, there's my email address, and then Dan Gullickson. Please enter your questions in the Q&A, and I will show this video just for fun, and then we'll do some questions. There's really no voice to it, but there's just road noise, so I don't think you'll hear anything. But this is a snow fence. This is a permanent snow fence on Highway 60. I think it's in Cottonwood County, but I want you to see the drifting snow over the highway before the snow fence, what's drifting over the highway after the snow fence is we're in the snow fence zone, protected zone, and then also how high these drifts are. This is an 8-foot fence to the right, and we're going west. So this is the first lane that gets snow from that particular direction. So let's just run it and see if it goes. Snow fence to the right. You see that there? You see the end of the snow fence? Look at the non-drifting and the non-snow over the road. Doesn't blow very much over the road. And the high drifts there. Now we're past the snow fence. A little bit more blowing snow on the highway. And I think that's it. Very cool. I'm going to back one up. And maybe we'll take some questions. Lauren, you want to go for the questions, please?
Yep. First question, why are the plantings in neat and tidy rows?
They don't necessarily have to be. You can actually mix up, especially if there's a wildlife planting, you can mix it up. I think traditionally we've had rows because of the snow protection and the snow load. The snow drifts will drift on whatever's second in line from the snow, from the west or the north. And we don't want usually the conifers to be that drifting area. So you can design your own planting and mix it up if you'd like. And then maybe have a more structured row on the inside of your planting, depending on what you want to protect. But yeah, you can design multiple. I've seen multiple, or actually no, not even rows, just multiple plants being scattered around a planting, and that's a way more call a wildlife planting. Whatever you want to do, it's your property, and you can do what you want to. Very good question.
Next question. Have these types of windbreaks been shown to reduce noise if the adjacent road is heavily traveled?
Yes, there's been, I think, lots of studies on noise abatement. Actually, there's been a lot of studies on odor abatement with swine facilities and livestock facilities. So be aware of that. Yeah, there's multiple benefits of these types of plantings. And obviously, the denser the planting, the better we have of screens, and we have of noise abatement and odor protection. Actually, the conifer plantings are best for odor because of the surface area of the needles collecting a lot of the dust particles that form the odor.
Okay, next question. What would you suggest if trying to establish a homestead windbreak to get some effect as quickly as possible, but then also thinking of long term?
Right. So we do have some hybrid poplar. Actually, the University of Minnesota has developed a hybrid poplar variety up north in Duluth, and that would be recommended probably if fast growing. Obviously, you probably want a shrub row, so you could plant some willows. That would be a fast growing type of lower growing type of plant. Most of our shrubs are pretty fast growing, so you want to protect that ground drifting with a shrub row. Rhodosia dogwoods, gray dogwoods, there's a lot of different dogwoods out there, even hazelnuts and service berries. Those are pretty fast growing shrubs that could be protection. If you want a higher protection, then certainly the hybrid poplars would be a fast growing, almost 4 feet, 3 to 4 feet a year type of planting that would give you the height of your protection.
If the wind has a fetch of about a mile, how many rows of standing corn need to be left for an effective road windbreak?
Well, that's a great question. I think MnDOT actually has a minimum of 12 rows. So they want 12 rows of standing corn rows to protect their highway. And actually, I know one producer out west plants a double row, a fetch area. Actually, he leaves an open area of harvested corn between the 12 row closest to the highway, 150 feet away. And then obviously maybe another 50 or 100 feet away from that, another 12 row. So I would say 12 rows of corn is probably the best recommended number of rows. I think you could do, snow is going to catch it 3 rows, but I know the MnDOT folks really want the 12 rows for a state highway contract. So that's maybe something to look at. If you're using it on your own property, maybe you could use less and just experiment with it maybe.
Next, we have an aging windbreak that was neglected prior to our owning the property. How do you go about adding new plants? Do you remove the old ones and try to add within?
Yes, and there's probably different ways to do that. There's some really excellent publications on renovating windbreaks from the National Agroforestry Center that I mentioned before. Also, I'd urge you to contact your Soil and Water Conservation District office and NRCS office in your county. And I think there's maybe some funds available for state and federal funds that you can use to renovate your property. But yeah, you can do it different ways. Obviously, you don't want to reduce your existing windbreak, because I've seen some of those, and obviously that you don't have that protection over the years of that development. So you want to do maybe a little bit at a time, depending on your plans, and then what's already out there. So you can do a little bit of piecemeal, or you can plant within the structure, take out what's going bad or what's dying, and then replant something else later in the other part of the windbreak. But you're right, there's different ways to do it.
Why use deciduous trees versus all conifers?
So I don't know. I think you're probably getting at those. If you're a shorter windbreak, if it's a living snow fence that's short, we want to use the conifers to catch a lot of the snow, and we use them first to catch the snow, and then sometimes we plant a shrub row, the second row. But the deciduous trees won't catch a lot of snow at the ground level, but they will mitigate the wind for a longer distance, depending on the height. So there's various reasons to use different structures. So depending on what you want to plan for and what you want to use the snow fence for, or a windbreak.
Okay, and are there programs that can be combined with NRCS or other cost share installations of windbreaks to provide a per acre conservation payment to farmers who install windbreaks? How
Yes.
many acres of windbreaks have been installed over the years in Minnesota, and how many have been removed?
Wow, I don't know those statistics, the last question, but that would be a really interesting question to ask. I wonder if NRCS might have that information. I'm not sure. But yes, I would, again, there are some cost share programs for taking land out of production that's been cropped, corn, soybean land, or other land, taken out of production. You can get it in a CRP program. You have to use the approved trees, I think, in that program. And then again, look at a grass buffer strip between that and the cropland, I think would be recommended. Also, again, contact your NRCS office and SWCD office for those cost share programs and funding programs.
Can we get a copy of the presentation?
Sure, we can post that. Actually, if you want to email me, there's my email address, my last name, Wyatt, at umn.edu. I can send that out to you.
And then what do you recommend to prevent deer from harming plants?
That's a good question. Either a tall fence, if anything white cedars, white pine, deer love. Obviously, rabbits and deer were looking for much of the food and fiber from trees this winter because of the snow cover. There's been a lot of rabbit and deer injuries to plants and girdling of stems. It's very difficult. There's some repellents, but they don't really work in the wintertime. You have to constantly repeat them. There's bud capping for the conifers, putting a sheet of paper and stapling it on the leader to keep the leader intact. But then you got bucks that rub on the trees too and take limbs out on some of the smaller plants, and they're not eating them, but they're rubbing them. I know my son had a problem with that. I said the deer aren't going to eat spruce, but we forgot about the bucks, and the bucks just rubbed the daylights out of some of the plants, and we had to replant them. Very difficult. Fencing is possibly a way to do it for a couple of years until the trees are established. But yeah, we have some good website type information on that, as well as the other sites that I mentioned.
Do you foresee any regulation for states to implement rules that there needs to be windbreaks alongside many highways?
Well, as I mentioned before, I don't know what MnDOT plans to do, but I know there's been some cases where they have planted windbreaks, like even a willow planting south of Waseca on the new Highway 14. They planted willows, and that's been a really good snow fence. They probably try and stay off of private property unless they can fund a permanent fence. I think that's probably their end goal. That way they basically buy the land. I think it's 25 feet of land, just a strip, and you can farm around it. You can farm right up to the fence. That's a permanent fence. Then the farmer receives the benefit of farming around it, and then MnDOT receives the benefits of that snow catch area for a long time. So I don't know if that's going to be, I know other states are paying landowners for living snow fences and standing corn rows. So I would certainly take advantage of some of those programs with MnDOT, and you can contact Dan Gullickson there for more information.
What spruce tree varieties are recommended versus Black Hills spruce, etc.?
Right. We're seeing a increase in needle cast disease in Colorado blue spruce and also Black Hill spruce. I've recommended Colorado blue spruce for the past 30 years. And now it's becoming a problem with stigmina. Rhizosphaera and stigmina are the two needle cast diseases in spruce. And the stigmina is taking down Black Hill spruce, a 30-foot tree in about 3 years. It's browning the needles from the base up. There are fungicides that you can spray on it, but you have to do it in May and June in the springtime, and it's just not logical to do a windbreak. We're recommending Meyer spruce and also Norway spruce. They're less planted, but they're not showing a lot of susceptibility as much as Black Hill spruce and also the Colorado blue spruce on those needle cast diseases. And that might be because they're less planted, but they're right now we're recommending those to be looked at and considered for a snow fence. Norway spruce, and then also Meyer spruce, either a field windbreak, windbreaks, or living snow fences for spruce.
Okay, and then I have a driveway I want to protect from snow. What's the minimum distance I should plant the windbreak? Driveway runs east-west, so windbreak would be on the north side.
That's a good question. I've seen a lot of plantings along the driveways where I drive from St. James to Mankato, and I've seen a lot of these windbreaks taken out because they're planted too close to the driveway. Usually you need about 150 feet, I'd say. And that's the kind of the going measurement that MnDOT uses for the snow catch, but it might be closer depending on the height of the shrub that you might be using for protection. But yeah, you really need a long distance to protect your driveway. I would say that 150 feet would be recommended. But if you don't have that much of a landscape to plant, then that's an issue. You could go smaller, but then You could maybe do a test strip and see what it does in one winter, not plant the whole strip. But yeah, that could be a problem if you're planting too close. And then what you also want to look at is I've seen other people with neighbors and ask neighbors if they want to put a field windbreak in their field to protect the other person's driveway or entrance to their driveway. And they've done that with the CRP program and then got paid for it. So that might be something to look at too.
This one's a comment. Innova tree is the hybrid poplar developed at NRRI, University of Minnesota Duluth,
Yes,
50 feet tall in 10 years. Hauser's Superior View Farm, Bayfield, Wisconsin, will begin selling it this summer, wholesale and retail. Several other nurseries will begin selling it by next year.
good. That's probably from Jeff Jackson. He's our extension educator at the Cloquet area and been working on that hybrid poplar project. Thank you, Jeff. Yes, keep an eye out for that. Innova, I think is the name. I should have had a slide on it. Thanks for mentioning that, Jeff.
And then a couple more questions in Q&A.
Okay.
A prior owner of my property planted a windbreak with blue spruce, and the trees are all impacted by needle disease.
Mhm.
Do you recommend proactivity removing the trees?
You can do that. You can do a number of things. You can actually prune off the lower limbs that are affected by the browning needles and see how long the other tree would last. You may want to plant some shrubs underneath that or around that area to get that ground blizzard protection, blowing snow protection. But you could possibly prune these particular lower branches up a little bit. These fungi are found in the soil, so it might protect the tree if you prune the plant up a little bit, and then maybe go for a few years and see if that helps to just rejuvenate those plantings. And they won't regrow at the bottom, but you may have to plant some other shrubs to protect that lower drifting area. And you could remove the whole thing too, and then plant new. But whatever you want to do, you've got to analyze what's existing there and what you need for protection.
And then are Norway and Myers spruce likely to thrive in projected future climate conditions 30 to 70 years out?
It's a great idea. Great question. We don't really know. I don't think they may not be predicted on some of our climate models. But I think that's the best planting right now that we have available, but that's a great question. Thank you for that. And
Okay.
we may be changing our plantings often with a changing climate.
And then will these webinars be available? I have not been able to listen to them.
Yes, in fact, let me continue on with my slides. And are we almost through the questions, Lauren?
Yep, Q&A is done. I think there was one other question in the chat and maybe a couple comments.
Sure. Okay, let me just go through this real quick and then we'll ask a few of those. So we do have all these recordings recorded. And here's a snapshot of some of our other meetings coming up. And as you get off the Zoom, you'll have an evaluation. We'd appreciate your evaluation of this webinar. And then our posted recordings are on the Z-link, z.umn.edu Fridays. So yeah, any more questions, Lauren? Or chat?
Yes, I saw one other one in here. Any advice for getting farmers or landowners to implement windbreaks or snow fences?
Just the MnDOT program is probably the best program right now that's helping farmers fund those protections on state highways. Again, check with your soil water conservation district office and NRCS office to see if there's some cost share programs and funding programs that you can use.
And I think there were just a couple comments. Somebody mentioned there's a website called Minnesota Wildflowers that also does a good job of talking about native plants and their sun, shade, water, soil needs. also for ease of planting and weeding with machinery.
Cool. Very good. If you got that website, go ahead and put it in the chat, please.
And then I think there's two others. I think the standard distance for windbreaks from the edge of roads for NRCS funding is about 175 feet,
Okay.
probably for that reason.
Yes. Yes. And the edge effect is really concerning on any township road or county road or state roads, any of that. So we don't want to plant a windbreak that's going to cause a problem to those sites.
And last comment I see is fungicides can slow/stop needle casts, but dead branches are dead.
Good point. The dead branches, yeah, will not recover. So you could prune those out and then protect what's living. The fungicide only works on the living portion of the tree. Good point.
And that's all I got.
Super. Well, thank you for joining us today. And you can see there's more information there. If you don't receive my Minnesota Woods newsletter, you can actually access the Z link there. And there's an email or there's a website there. And we can put you on that email list. That's a great resource. We send out monthly newsletters regarding trees and forests in Minnesota. And again, our recordings are all being recorded and posted on the Z link, z.umn.edu/Fridays. And thanks for joining us today. And you can mention to others if they want to register for the Fridays programs. That's just a Z link/Fridays 2023. Thank you for joining us today.